The Chronos team recently launched a proposal that was offering to increase the staking yield for Crocoin, and this proposal did in fact pass with 98% in favor of turning up the rewards tab. So in today's episode of the Everything Crypto Show, we are going to break down exactly what this means for Crocoin and the passive income you can expect to receive from this altcoin moving forward. So for starters, we can see here that the verdict is in. 98% voted yes to turn up the rewards tab, proceeding with an increase in Crow incentives. And the Crow fam decision is part of broader efforts to maintain a balanced ecosystem, signaling strong support for a more fluid and rewarding network. And a lot of people were really caught off guard to see the drastic decrease that came to the staking yield a couple of weeks back. And we did cover all of this on the channel and exactly why this was happening, but you can actually see here, taking a look at stakingrewards.com. If we take a look at the amount of Crow that was being staked on the Chronos POS chain, it basically jumped over a 2-day period from about 6.8 billion Crow up to 9 billion Crow, and it's currently sitting at about 9.2 bill. Now, if we actually take a look at the reward rate, in the same chart as the staked Crow, you can see a big inverse correlation here. Effectively demonstrating that as more Crow gets staked on the network, the rewards are being reduced. And that's simply because you are now sharing your rewards with more people staking, right? So the more people that stake their Crow, the less rewards are being handed out. But on the flip side of that, the more Crow that is being locked up and not available on buying and selling markets. So that's always something to consider as well. And the reason we did see such a drastic increase here to the staking yield, this was not retail. This was crypto.com actually moving some of the Crow coin that was locked up for their Visa program and actually moving it here into the Chronos POS chain to further support that blockchain as well. And obviously a lot of people were not happy to see basically an overnight decrease in their staking yield from 7.5% down to about 5.5%. And this is the proposal that was launched a couple of days later. So basically, they were opting to increase targeted bonded ratio to optimize Crow incentives. So for some context, in 2023, there was a massive rise in the amount of Crow staking participation on the Chronos POS chain. The total amount staked increased 70% from 5 billion at the beginning of 2023 up to 8.5 billion at the time of this article. And that was at 8.5 billion. Now we're actually sitting at 9.25 billion if we take a look at the statistics currently on the chain. So effectively, what this proposal was aiming to do to increase the APR, but also increasing the inflation by doing so. Because as we have seen a rise in the amount of Crow being staked, the yield has dropped from 12% down to 6.5%, okay? So at the beginning of 2023, Crocoin was actually yielding double digits. Here in May of that year, it was actually almost sitting at 14%, okay? So, definitely a big decrease in the amount of yield being offered. And to understand the actual mechanisms behind the staking yield, it adheres to an inflation schedule governed by the Mint module, and the APR, so the staking yield, is influenced by two primary factors. So the first is the new rate of Crow token creation as stipulated by the Mint module, and the second is the staking or bonding ratio. The higher the number of staked Crow tokens, the more recipients there are for rewards, which in turn dilutes the APR for each participant. So that kind of describes the inverse correlation that we were talking about at the beginning of the video. So why would we need a higher staking APR? Well, basically to actually incentivize people to join the network, okay? When you actually lock up your Crow on the Chronos POS chain, you are validating the blockchain and you are subjecting it to a 28-day unbonding period. That's why I do frequently kind of take a look on the channel at how much Crow is being staked, because it's not like staking where you can withdraw whenever you want and, opt to buy, sell, whatever you want to do with that token. Move it elsewhere. When you lock up your Crow coin on the Chronos POS chain, you are basically committing to having it locked up on that chain. And if you want it back, you have to wait a 4-week period. So, you could assume that most people locking up their CRO on this chain are here for being a long-term holder, right? Like, why would somebody be locking it up and subjecting it to a 28-day unbonding period if they were not in it for the long run? So, that's the general reason I do look at the Chronos POS chain, even more than the Chronos chain, because the Chronos chain does not have any sort of stipulation like that. There's a liquid staking, but there is no native staking on the Chronos chain at the moment. So for perspective, other layer 1 blockchains have staking ratios exceeding 50%. Solana has a bonding ratio of 68%. Polkadot has got 58%. If we actually take a look here at the main page, you can see that, right? Like, these are the staking ratios. Solana 67, Ether 24, Sui 82%, Cardano 64%, AVAX 55%. And then we have CROcoin coming in at just over 30% in terms of that bonded ratio. And that 30% is actually a critical number, which we are going to break down exactly why right now when we get into the new mechanism and how it actually works. So there are 3 key parameters that are being changed with this vote now passing. The first one is inflation max. So this parameter sets the upper limit of the inflation rate, currently set at 2.5%. So, before this proposal passed, the annual inflation rate was actually sitting at 2.5%. Now that the proposal has passed, the inflation rate is increasing to 3.7%. So, not a massive increase to the inflation rate. It's not double what it was before or anything like that. Just up from 2.5% to 3.7%. Now, inflation rate change is the second parameter that has been adjusted, and this dictates the maximum annual change in the inflation rate. It's influenced by how the current bonding ratio compares to the gold bonded, which right now, or previously sat at 0.6%. That has now been increased up to 1%. Now, gold bonded, this one is important to understand because it does show you the influence of passing that 30% threshold. So gold bonded was the parameter is the parameter that indicates the desired staking ratio for the Chronos POS chain, which was set at 30%. The network's inflation rate adjusts in response to this target. If the actual staking ratio is below the goal, the inflation rate will increase up to inflation max. Now, conversely, if the staking ratio exceeds the goal, the inflation rate will decrease, which also decreases the yield being offered. So what they have done is increased the gold bonded from 30% up to 60%. And effectively, this means that the actual amount of CRO being staked, currently sitting, at about 30% more or less, it would have to double up to 60% before the rewards actually begin slowing down once again. So definitely something to keep in mind. And they did say here once again that it passed. Now, I want to talk about this in conjunction with the community burn. This is something we've covered on the channel pretty frequently. In fact, if we go over to MintScan, let's take a look at the burn wallet. I haven't checked it out now in a couple of, maybe in like a week or so. And let's take a look at that. So the community pool is sitting at 20.33 mil, or, otherwise known as about 1.779 mil worth of CRO. And this is on top of the 50 mil that has already been burned. So we've now seen about 70 million CRO removed from the flow completely. And basically what they talk about here is how is the increase in the inflation rate actually going to work in conjunction or against the community burn. So the community burn proposal has had a pretty minimal impact on the staking yield so far. The decrease in APR is largely due to the increase in the amount of bonded CRO. And in the context of the Chronos POS's tokenomics, basically what this community burn did was originally 100% of CROcoin was being given out to the stakers. That has been converted into 85% going to stakers and then 15% of rewards going into that community wallet. So effectively, now that the actual inflation rate for CROcoin is going up, this means that 85% is still going to stakers, 15% is still going into the burn wallet. but this does mean that more of the Crow coin is actually being handed out to stakers than it is being burned, right? If this was a 50-50 split, okay, and the inflation rate was doubled, it wouldn't make a difference, because that means that, the amount of Crow being handed out to stakers is going up by 50%, but the amount of Crow being put in the burn wallet is also going up by 50%. However, with this community burn, that is not the split. It's actually 85-15, meaning that yes, inevitably more Crow coin is being distributed to stakers than is being burned as a result of this new proposal passing. But again, I mean, I would like to see them kind of focus now on burning more. I personally think that staking yield is nice, but I think price action is much more important, okay? If you want to incentivize people to contribute to your network, you want to get people looking at the price action. That's the first thing that grabs people's attention, not the actual yield the token is offering. Ether does not offer the most impressive yield, but historically it offers some very, very nice returns. Even BNB token, this is a top 5 token offering about a 2.5% yield. BNB's in the top 5 because it has seen a massive increase in terms of the price action. So just something to keep in mind when it comes to that. And speaking of the price action, I do want to wrap things up taking a look at the Crow coin chart. And there has actually been a pretty big change in terms of the price action, or rather something that we were keeping a very close eye on has actually occurred. So if you guys have been watching our recent videos on Crow coin, the one thing I said that I was actually looking for was a retest and a validation of the bull market support band as a level of support. And the bull market support band is one that I do use pretty often, not just with Crow, but with majority of altcoins and, Bitcoin as well. Because generally speaking, this indicator is pretty effective over the long term of kind of telling you whether or not a coin is in a bullish or bearish trend. So a perfect example here would actually be if we go back to 2021, we actually saw Crow coin bounce off of the bull market support band as support. And that would be before it went on that monster run from, 18 cents up to $1 at the peak of the bull run. And then we move into the bear market here. And we can actually see in March, Crow coin got rejected at the bull market support band here for the first. Actually, we broke below it earlier in about January, but got rejected here on a back test back in March. And that was at 50 cents. And off of that rejection, we saw Crow coin decline about 80% down to that 10-cent level. And then here, once again in November, boom, Crow coin got rejected at the bull market support band once again. And then it landslid another 50+% from 12 cents down to 5 cents. And then even here, I mean, you can see that in 2023, it was getting rejected at the bull market support band for a majority of that year, up until October, when it actually did break above the bull market support band, and then it proceeded to effectively double in the matter of just a couple of weeks. And yeah, you guys can clearly see here that the bull market support band does tend to be a pretty good indicator of what is going on with altcoins and Bitcoin. And so the one thing I said I was looking for here on a break below the 10-cent level was to actually see how this coin reacted at the bull market support band. And we have officially back tested and validated that as an area of support. And from that area of support here at the bottom of the bull market support band, we're up about 15% from that level. So definitely eyeing a retest of the 10-cent level for Crow coin after a successful bounce at the bull market support band so far. And that's what I am looking for when it comes to the price action. So on that note, I hope you did enjoy the content in today's video. I hope you are all staying happy, safe, and healthy, and I hope to catch you in the next one. Peace out for now.